Welcome. Well, people are still coming into this webinar on cooling centers. It's the first webinar from the European Heat Adaptation Community, together with the Community of Practice Heat from the Netherlands. I'm very happy to see that more than 200 people have registered, and normally half of them attend. So we're still a big crowd to address this upcoming issue in the context of extreme heat that is coming up in our region in the world. My name is Madeleine Helmer. I'm have been working on heat adaptation with the Dutch Climate Alliance, which is an NGO working for 150 municipalities and most of the provinces in the Netherlands. We've been working on heat adaptation with many municipalities for the last couple of years, but also with social housing organizations and public health organizations, knowledge institutes and others. And the Community of Practice Heat is a kind of example of how we have organized a network of municipalities and provinces for the last 3 years, in which more than 100 people attend and represent tens of municipalities. And based on that experience, we have initiated the European Heat Adaptation Community on Heat Action Day in 2025 on the 2nd of June, which by now has more than 70 people who attend from 13 countries. We meet every month in an informal way to find out what are commonalities when it comes to heat risk mapping, when it comes to local heat health action plans, national heat health action plans, knowledge. And one of the issues that came up also in that community, like in the Netherlands community, was extreme heat. And there is a moment in temperature when nature-based solutions are limited in their effects. And we may have cooling centers, cooling shelters, places where people can stay for a while to cool down from the heat. And this is actually the basis of this webinar. We're very pleased to have presenters from north to south. And everybody's looking for Barcelona with 400 shelters. So we're very keen to learn from them. But we felt if we start with Barcelona, everybody's intimidated. So let's start from the north and go down, because it's an issue that's relevant to all of us. What we see as experience, I don't know if you feel familiar with that as well or have similar ones, is that we tend, even though we know from the science what's coming our way, floods, droughts, extreme events, heat, we still react when it's happening. And that's a reality that we have to deal with. But it's good that at least in this session, we'll start to also within northern countries. And I'm happy to see that, particularly from Belgium and Germany, many people attend. How can we prepare and learning from the experiences in the south? What would work? And also learn from each other in northern European countries, where what are the first steps to take to prepare for cooling centers and step in. That is basically the idea of this webinar. We have I hope five presentations, because London is yet calling. But we'll see as we go along the way. At least we have 4 presentations from north to south from different experiences how to prepare for cooling centers. What we intend to, it will not be the last time we will discuss cooling centers. So our intention and invitation to all of you is show a lot of your experiences in the chat. So share links, share experiences, questions, and so forth. So we can grab them after this session and see what kind of helpful follow-ups maybe there. Maybe a smaller group, if you would like to continue conversations, we can try to facilitate all that. So it's an experiment. This will be recorded, this session, as you already see, and will be shared with everybody who has registered on our site, and then you will also see a report from the links and the relevant discussions that we had here. I hope that is fine with you. This is how it works. I'm looking at my notes. I think it's also good, I think, to be aware for those who know that currently the European Commission is preparing a climate resilience and risk management integrated framework, a kind of policy, not a policy anymore, a kind of an action plan on how its policy on adaptation can be implemented in the coming years. And we hope also that this webinar can contribute to that discussion and ongoing contributions that many of you may want to give to that process as well. So it's all a little bit linked. This is the idea. So we have presentations from Amsterdam, London, Great Authority, Paris, the region of Emilia-Romagna in Italy, and Barcelona. Presentations around 10 minutes. Please use the chat as much as you can for questions, but also ideas you have, things you would like to share. And then I hope at the end, I won't be too tight on the timing, but a little bit. I hope there's place for discussion and some ideas you have in the follow-up of this session. If that is clear to all of you, and I don't have time for hands, I would like to ask Amsterdam, Eline Kolen, who used to work with the municipality from Amsterdam and has now moved to the regional public health service of that region, and Faye van Del, who's been a trainee with the municipality of Amsterdam, to present to us basically how do you start working on cooling centers when it's not an issue, dominant issue in a city like Amsterdam. Can I give you the floor, Eline and Faye?
Great. So when people think of deadly heat, they rarely think of a city of Amsterdam. Yet heat already leads to around 110 premature deaths each year in Amsterdam, and climate change could increase this risk even fivefold in our analysis. And these are deaths that are largely preventable. My name, indeed, what Marlene already said, is Eline Kolen. I'm the heat coordinator of the city of Amsterdam. And it's my pleasure to work on this team. Amsterdam is a very data-driven city when it comes to climate adaptation and heat. And since 2019, we've mapped heat risks across the city, and we combine exposure, vulnerability, and health data. So today we already know a lot. So at the moment we're in a phase that it's time to move from on the knowing to actually doing. So that means that on an urban scale, we are investing heavily in greening to also reduce the urban heat island effect. And on the health side, we've had a formal heat response plan since 2024. And that defines who contacts whom during a heat wave, but also how we warn and inform risk groups. So over the years, we've increasingly focused on what we see as the real hotspots. And our real hotspots are thousands of our homes that were never designed in the past for extreme heat. We've always designed our homes for extreme cold. And so that means that retrofitting this will take years, but that during this time, vulnerable groups are stuck in these overheating homes. And during extreme heat wave, our public space does also not offer relief. So that's why we started a cooling shelters trajectory last September. And we really like to develop an operational and also scalable model, but also embed this in, structurally into our heat response plan, but also our crisis system. So we don't treat this as a one-off intervention. So my colleague Faye now will take you through how we're approaching this in practice and what our plans are for this year.
Yes, thank you, Eline. Oh. Great. Okay, thank you, Eline, for the introduction. My name is Faye, and I started working at the municipality of Amsterdam regarding the topic of heat in the city from September 2025. And I've started a research on the way that heat works in the city of Amsterdam and heat shelters or cooling centers, as we call them from here on. And I want to tell you how I started this research. And it's nice to say that I started by reading all the examples that I could find on the internet yet. So I've looked globally to the United States of Amsterdam and New York City, but I've also looked up cities in Europe, so like Barcelona. I'm really excited to hear you speak later because I think we have a lot of things to learn from you. Same goes for all the other speakers today. And we've also been looking at local cities in the Netherlands, like, for example, The Hague, because they are already a little bit further ahead in this topic. So I've made a whole overview of all the different cities and their approaches so far to see what we can learn from them. And I did that together with the local heat risk map of Amsterdam, which you can see on the bottom with the arrows. And as you can see, all the colors in the map are from green to dark red. They're how do you call it, viewed on the map. And we are looking at the most extreme red areas in Amsterdam. So I've put a few arrows on the places that are darkest red, and they're combined mostly. And this map is built on from the exposure, the sensitivity, and the adaptability of the people who live in the city. So all of these factors are combined, and the places that are red in the city have it worst. So that's why we are focusing on these areas to start with the cooling centers. And then in step 3, I looked into those areas, those urban areas of the city that are most red. And I've been starting conversations with many different organizations, such as community centers, public libraries, and schools, to see and investigate and start a conversation about if we can start a cooling center in these locations. And I'm still talking to many of these organizations. Nothing is really concrete yet, but we do have a few organizations that are really enthusiastic to work with us for our pilot in the summer of 2026, so this year. And I will show you a little bit on how we see this pilot to start in the summer. So there are a few points that we will work on. We are already working on them, but we are trying to make them perfect in the summer. So we can try and see how it works. And the first step is engaging with other local profit organizations. So right now we're looking with talking with schools and libraries and buildings from the municipality of Amsterdam themselves. But we are also interested to see if we can engage with profit organizations such as cafes, museums, gyms, as many things you can think of, just to see if we can broaden this project and have as many cooling centers as possible. And the next step would be developing a targeted community communication strategy. Excuse my language. In order for these cooling centers to work, we want to engage with the people we think need it most. But this can be quite a challenge. So we are still trying to investigate how to work on this communication strategy. And for this, we will collaborate with interns at the municipality of Amsterdam and students to have their knowledge and use it in our pilot. Then next, we will start opening the first cooling centers in the summer of 2026. We don't know how many yet, but we are trying to make a little bit of a group who wants to start from this summer on. So we try to have as many as possible, but we know that it needs a lot of work. But we just want to see how it will work if we just open a few. So it will be an experiment. And we will start with the different locations in the red areas I showed you on the map earlier. And we want to do this working with a system which you can see as energy labels. So right now I put down A, B, and C. And that would mean that an A cooling center with an A label would be high developed. So it would probably be a bigger location. It would have more facilities, more people working there, and a bigger communication strategy. But we also want to focus on a bit smaller locations with less facilities, just to try and see how different locations or different labels work in the city. So we want to try everything and see what works best, so we can evaluate later than after the summer. So we will see how different cooling centers will work in the city of Amsterdam. And then lastly, the municipality of Amsterdam is working on a community-driven map for inside and outside cool locations in the city, which means that we will have a map, we hope in the summer, where local residents of Amsterdam can put in the locations they've been and how cool they are, how nice they are, and maybe even if they have an A or a C level on the label system we built up. So this research has been quite complex because Amsterdam did not have as much information on cooling centers yet in the city. And even though we have looked at many other cities we will hear from after this presentation, we still have a few questions we're not ready to answer yet. And I've put them on the screen right here. And I will read them to you. So the first one is, which facilities are strictly necessary in the cooling centers? We've already made a list with many facilities that would be nice to have, but we are still looking to find some terms or facilities we really need in these places. So we are really wondering what the other cities are doing for that one. Then the next one is a suitable guideline for the indoor temperature. because I've noticed that many different cities have a different approach for this. Some cities have a really strict guideline, only 26 degrees or lower, and some others have a guideline that says if it's cooler than outside, it's fine too. So we are still looking for a clear answer to that question. And then the third question is what communication strategies are used to inform residents about the cooling centers? Since we know there's many different ways, but we would like to see the most effective way to reach our residents who need it most. So we wonder how you're doing that. And then lastly, we are wondering what locations in the city are visited most and which factors contribute to their success. So we hope to see that in the coming presentations of the following presenters. And if you're not presenting, but still want to tell us your viewing on this, we have put our emails on the next slide. So please screenshot and send me all the information or the ideas you have, and we can take it into account for our projects. So that is everything we prepared. We are really looking forward to some questions from the audience if you have some, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Within 10 minutes.
Yes, that's great.
And leading questions, I think, not only for this webinar, but for the time to come. I said it's not the last time we will discuss this. If people from the audience, we have a little bit of time, would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. And we have time for that now. Well, I have one question. Javier, you have a question.
Yeah, Xavier, yes. Well, thank you very much for the presentation and sharing all your doubts and questions and all that, and the project you are doing. Very interesting. I already stated in the chat we are very highly interested in something, in a challenge we haven't resolved yet, which is guiding people through the cooling routes or the coolest routes to go from point A to point B to wherever they want to go and something like that. So anything that can be shared, anyone, any city, any municipality attending, any public authority or private authority willing to share some tool that others can improve, I think will be very interesting, so that we can all improve it and benefit from everywhere in something like that, which is not ready yet, as far as I know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's also a question I know from other cities that how people can transport it to this place if they're not able to move themselves. So not how they can move themselves, but also how people can help them to bring to cooling shelters and cooling centers. That's another issue, another need for voluntary action. Okay, now I'm very curious whether Michello is here from London. Melanie.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Hello, Madeleine. I've
Very
been sending messages in the chat. Absolutely, I'm here. And it's very lovely to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the invitation. I am very glad to be here, to share with you and to learn from all the other cities. Probably a good introduction to my presentation is to explicitly say that I am from an emergency planning kind of side of our local authority. So it's really interesting to hear how people are getting to cooling centers from different perspectives. We do have many links to adaptation, of course, but this presentation will mostly focus on the pragmatic approach to setting up cool spaces in London within our kind of governance framework and constraints. So I'll get straight into it. Cool Spaces in London is an initiative that we've been running from the London Resilience Unit. It is a open register of venues where any organization in London can sign up and put forward their venue to open up during the summer for anyone to go in. They need to comply with a number of set criteria that I have put here in the slide. They need to be open to all, free access, offer free drinking water to anyone, free sitting space. They need to communicate how much free sitting space they have, and they need to guarantee a lower temperature than outdoor. It can be through any means, be it shading, ventilation, AC, and I can say something more about that in due course. I know that Amsterdam colleagues had questions exactly on this point, which is a very fair question. So the key issue here for us is to do something that has a sufficiently low entry barrier so that anyone in London who feels that know their community, know they can do something when it's really hot, can have an opportunity to share that information to be part of a wider response. What do we actually offer and provide? The key thing that we offer as London Resilience Unit is an online map. This online map has been designed with our data visualization team. It has a number of features in terms of user experience, layers, complementary data sets such as canopy cover on streets and parks. It's searchable. You can switch on and off the cool spaces that have AC. It's phone optimized, and it has a number of different features like that. One of the key things about this map, and I'm probably going to say something about it later, is that it needs to be memorable. It needs to be quite attractive. We're trying to slightly improve it every year so people remember, because linked to the map, there is also a heat advice, heat messaging, and links to official advice from National Health Service and other online resources. So I think that it's probably useful here in order to give a little bit of some kind of rationale for this approach. It's useful for me to give you a bit of context. We went for this approach of mobilizing local energies because the Greater London Authority is a metropolitan authority. The legal definition is strategic authority. Its role is coordinating policy across different municipalities. This is a map of the 33 municipalities that compose London. And because of that, we are not a classic city administration as others might be part of in this call. It is the different London boroughs that own buildings, that have the relationship with local organizations, that have the legal responsibility to do many of the different things that are needed during heat waves, during a response. So this project aims to give that shared baseline so that all Londoners have a single entry point into this issue, know where to find information, and supports the interaction between the voluntary and community sector and the different boroughs. And there are, of course, other ways we do that beyond the map, which I'm going to touch upon in a moment. So, because of this arrangement, this governance context, there are different parts of the Greater London Authority that are designed to do different things. My unit is there to support emergency response. And one of the key roles for the Mayor of London and for the Greater London Authority is to ensure that there is consistent messaging and a shared awareness of situation on the ground at all times, so that different sides of the response can be enabled and coordinated. And this is why our map stresses so much the importance of sharing messages about heat risk. So it is not a public health interventions. We are not requiring participating organizations that put forward their venues to cater for the specific needs of certain vulnerable populations, because local boroughs, the different boroughs that compose London, have their own programs to deal with that. They have their own engagement with care homes. They have their own teams that are looking after, for example, rough sleepers, homeless people, and so on. Although we do have connections with those teams as well. So because of the kind of nature of this work, we have kind of come up with a set of criteria that is loose enough and low entry barrier enough for most organizations to be able to enter the space, be part of a response. But also we wanted to make sure that these spaces were doing the right things. So in close coordination with our public health team within the authority, we have come up with this list of criteria. There are 2 tiers because we know that local organizations might have constraints in terms of capacity that make it quite hard for them to open their venues full time. So the key difference between these 2 tiers is that tier 1 cool spaces are open more reliably and more often for longer hours, whereas and might have better accessibility, and you can kind of check the slides to better understand what I mean. Whereas tier 2 organizations need to only be open a minimum of 2 days a week. And I'm glad to have a conversation about the details of this. Incidents, it's quite interesting how different events that have taken place in London have shaped this project. The key one has been our first 40 plus heat wave that we recorded in 2022, record breaking. In that year, we had a significant increase in the numbers of cool spaces signing up, and a heightened awareness in local partners of heat risk, which resulted in a much closer engagement with a number of different sectors that hadn't been engaging with heat response and sometimes with emergency response more in general. Particularly, I want to single out here culture and faith that have been coming forward very prominently, particularly in response to heat waves. This is to give you a flavor of the different types of spaces that are part of the program at the moment. And I also put there the overall number for 2024. We jumped from 160 to 250 cool spaces in 1 year. Those are the different sectors. Libraries remain the most prominent type of space that engage with this, and there are reasons for that. I'm not getting into, but I'm glad to engage in a conversation later on. There is also an issue around monitoring that I wanted to bring up. This project is essentially a no-budget project at the moment. It's entirely done with in-house resources. We don't have capacity to monitor the usage of cool spaces in real life. Some of the borrowers do, and we encourage them to do so. We are, however, working with academic partners, identifying academic partners, and supporting their bids with research funders so that they can conduct some real-life monitoring of usage of cool spaces during the summer. However, we do monitor the access to our map, and we have seen a clear correlation between heat wave days and accesses to the map, visits to the map. And during the heat waves in 2022, we saw over 100,000 visits. Of these, about 91% were during heat wave days, which gave us a little bit of an indication that there is a gap in the response at the moment, and cool spaces might help in breaching it. However, of course, we need more evidence of what's happening on the ground. The other big innovation since last year has been the creation of a community of practice for London boroughs. And it is a extraordinarily complex governance landscape we need to navigate. So we are very much led by local needs. This community of practice is open to all sorts of different teams. We have people from adaptation, public health, emergency planning, community engagement, and the idea is to come up with creative solutions. We want people that are dealing with issues on the ground, and we are seeing the first results. We are seeing new ways of using funding to ensure that the amenities can be deployed in the different cool spaces, a better coordination across sectors so that also private sector funding can be made available for this. And looking ahead to next summer, for the first time, we've been running this project since 2020. We managed to secure some funding, and we are designing a training program for cool spaces managers and for the organizations that use those venues to better understand heat risk, what they can do in case of an incident. And we're also going to deliver a grants program to mobilize the local knowledge of local organizations so that they can design solutions in partnership, led by communities in partnership with their local authority. And I'm going to leave it at that, and I very much look forward to hearing from colleagues from other cities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. such an interesting new angle again you bring to the conversation. It's very helpful. I have one question. When do you open the centers? What is the moment to activate them?
So the project is aligned with the heat wave planning period, which is dictated by the UK Health Security Agency. So the period goes from the 1st of June to the 30th of September.
Okay, 1st of June to the 30th of September. So that's the whole period when those cool centers are open. Okay, clear. So it's not on and off with a heat wave. Okay, clear. Thank you so much.
That's right.
Very helpful. I have an additional question on free access to all. We learned from Portland, where we have been in contact with their heat wave in the 21, that there was a tension between vulnerable people with chronic diseases and who are elderly, and people with coming with a psychiatric background, often related also to homelessness. And they learned from that it's not helpful to combine the two. Is that an issue in London around free access?
It has been. It has been. We, in some cases, we are now quite clear with local partners and local authority that this might come up as an issue. We still require in the application to be part of this program to guarantee free access to all. We do, however, suggest caution, and we do suggest that venues link up with their housing teams in their local authority to get the guidance and to get the contacts of the people that might be called in to support specific needs.
Okay, well, it's also an issue for you to discuss, and that will be come back later also as well. I think
as I mentioned before, like in each borough there is a housing team that has specific legal responsibilities to cater for rough sleepers. So they, depending on the local emergency plan for heat, they might have cooling centers that are specifically catering for the needs of rough sleepers. However, there is a lot of flexibility and freedom for each local authority to decide what their priorities are, and they need to cater for those needs, but they can do it in a number of different ways. So not all of them open up cooling centers for rough sleepers. It's a complex landscape, as I mentioned.
It is, but that's why it needs to be addressed. Yeah. Thank you so much. Are there any other burning questions? Also looking to my colleague Edwin, who's monitoring the chat. If not,
no, not at all.
Rebecca, yeah. Why are libraries attractive as school spaces? Is a question from Rebecca.
Oh yeah.
Here they come.
It is a very good question. There are a number of reasons, and some of them are historical. In many boroughs, libraries are still under the direct management of the local authority. So it's quite easy for a local authority to put forward their own libraries. And also libraries have been historically equipped in terms of different expertise being available within the library. Often in London, we have social prescribers, community development officers that are in the library. And therefore, libraries are a first point of contact for communities, for different members of the community, some of them with specific vulnerabilities. So they end up doing much more than just lending books to people.
Yeah, very helpful. I see other questions as well, but for the reasons of time, I don't open for those to go to the next speaker. And we'll see, as I said at the introduction, maybe not all of you were there. Then at the end of this webinar, we will conclude. There will be the link to the viewing, but there'll also be a report on the links and the questions that were shared in the chat. So there'll be another way of communicating and answering questions than just in the time slot of this webinar in the future. Again, this will not be the last time we will discuss cooling shelters. I therefore would like to move to our next speaker, which is Léa Morfoise from the City of Paris, working again also there in the resilience department and the social environment department. And Léa, may I give you the floor?
Well, thank you so much. My name is Leia. I manage the small team that's in charge of climate adaptation and resilience at the ecological department at the city of Paris. Okay, well, I had a few slides about like general stuff about heat, but we're all in this webinar because we know how heat is going to be a huge problem for us all. But just maybe to say that we're currently in the process of updating a vulnerability report that we did about the city of Paris in terms of heat. So we're updating it. It's a big work that we're doing, and we're seeing that like it's getting worse, and also it's going faster. The increase of heat days and heat nights. So everything that we planned, for example, for 2050 is now planned for to happen in 2030. Sorry, for Paris, in terms of tropical days and tropical nights. And we also have a huge problem, as a lot of you have to, with the urban heat island effect. So we're doing a lot of work on that topic too. We have a global cooling strategy that I'm going to go very briefly through, and then I'll talk about like 4 different projects and experimentations that we're leading about cooling centers. Basically, the vulnerability report assessment that we did in 2021 and that we are currently updating identified 4 main threats for the city of Paris, which is the heat, of course, the risk of flooding, water scarcity, and the destruction of biodiversity. So we're aiming at like addressing solutions regarding these 4 main problems, and heat and floodings are one of the major ones for sure. So our solutions are based on green solutions, blue solutions involving water, gray solutions that involve more the creation or adaptation of infrastructure and technical solutions, and then behavioral solutions, trainings and behavioral changes. These are the 4 main projects that I wanted to talk about. The 2 first ones they're not really like pilot projects or experimentations anymore. They've become like pure public policies right now. And the 2 last ones are more directly related to cooling centers, or are at a really like a starting stage and experimental stage. So we're more advanced on other things than cooling shelters and places. Our way of dealing with cooling places and providing cooling shelters for people was mainly to work on the adaptation of public space. So it's a bit like what London did. We have an online map, and you have a picture of it in front of your eyes here, of cool islands that we identified in the city. They can be different things. They can be museums, they can be air conditioning libraries, they can be swimming pools, public showers, parks, of course. So you have different categories. It's online. We have identified over 1,000 of them, with specific ones, specific categories for parks and yards and gardens. We have a goal for it's rather 2030 would be for each Parisian to be a 7-minute walk away from like a cool island in the city. So that's a goal that has been included in our climate plan that was just implemented for the city. I mean, that we just voted at the end of 2025. So what is a cool island? It's, so as I said, parks and gardens, places with water foggers, and places with shading furniture. That's like examples of like outdoor solutions. About indoors example, we have swimming pools, library, as London mentioned, and district city halls too. District city halls, as you may know, Paris has 20 different districts, a little less now because 4 of them kind of got together a couple of years ago. Each district city hall has like a cool room open to anyone to use as a cooling center during the summer. But we noticed that they're not really used because maybe they're not identified enough. We don't communicate enough about the possibility of using the spaces. So we noticed that it's not being super efficient. So that's an issue that we need to tackle. We noticed that the online map is being used, and especially, of course, during extreme heat event, as you can see in the lower graph. Like this is the use of the map online during the really warm days of the summer of 2022. So it's being used. A lot of people can consult it, a lot of tourists, but also Parisians. And there's like every time there is like a heat wave or like heat days in Paris, we'd have specific communication campaign and public posters on the streets outside in Paris to communicate about the existence of the online map. We have a big goal about reinforcing the cool island in the city in terms of greening the city, planting more trees, building more oasis schoolyards, etc., etc. One of the second, so here's just a couple of examples. One of the second pilot project that has now become like a pure public policy is the creation of oasis schoolyards. So it's basically turning elementary school schoolyards, and we're now tackling elementary and also kindergarten, but we're now tackling middle schools too, into an oasis place. So basically letting the water infiltrate the soil, the ground, and turning it into a cool island. So we're doing this more and more, and it's been a very big success. Yeah, that's another example. And reinforcing in our policy to reinforce cool islands in the city, we also want to reinforce the place of water and the use of water in the city as well. And last year, we have opened a few places where you can swim in the Seine River. We have a shading plan, so you can see on the left a shading furniture that we are putting in the public space. And that's a project that my team is doing. So basically, we identified the places that need more shade in the city on the public space together with local authorities, like the 20 different districts. And we build this experimental shading furniture. But one of the big problems, so here you have the Cool Islands map during at night of everything that's open and closed. So you can see that the goal is that everybody would be 7 minutes away from a cool island and not 15 minutes away. But the problem that we've been facing with the map is that it needs a constant updating process that is not implemented now. So a lot of the places that are on the map are actually cannot be considered fully as cool islands today, because there's a change of views, because the place needs renovation works, because the more warm it gets, some of them are not as efficient anymore, etc., etc. So we are now facing a huge problem of how to upload this map and also how to make sure that it's constantly updated. So the idea of Amsterdam to have like a open to the public map might be a idea that we could consider. So we're considering having a level of cool islands with a more like strict criteria that could maybe be labeled A, B, C, and that could show on the map to be for the map to be more accurate. And we definitely need still to reinforce the communication around the existence of the map, despite having posters, etc. on the street. It's still not enough. And the two last focus in the 2 minutes left that I have that I wanted to make are really pilot projects that we're working on. We are looking at trying at and starting in the spring of the summer an experimental project in finding alternative uses for underused underground parking lots, because the reduction of cars in the city is now like one of the consequences. Now we have some parking lots that are underused. And so we're looking at what we can do in these parking lots. It's not easy for many reasons. You cannot, for security reason, put a lot of people on the ground. You can only use the first level for experimentation. It's not a great place to stay, so it's probably maybe good for a shelter for like a short amount of time, but it's not like you're not going to spend your all day in a underground parking lot. We did an experimentation 2 years ago in using an old former train station as a heat shelter, and it was a really good experimentation. But we're going to see if we can extend it to underground parking spots. And then the second thing that we're trying to do, as all of you, is trying to experiment the creation of a network of climate shelters dedicated to fighting heat. It's integrated in the resilience strategy that we've voted like 6 months ago. So we need to work on it, but it's hard to see because we have such little space in Paris, what the business model would be, and would it be a crisis shelter that would work for both heat and floodings, for example, or only heat. So we're still trying to define the different criteria for like a place to be a shelter. And we're looking at leading an experimentation with local craftsmen and small craftsmen's companies in Paris that might at the very local scale play a role in identifying shelter places. So that's something that we're looking at and that we're going to work on in the next couple months. And one last thing is we have an extreme heat plan dedicated to vulnerable people, and we also want to experiment expanding the hours, the opening hours of public buildings to shelter vulnerable people in case of like an extreme heat. And that's something that we might do in the summer of 2026. I'm going to finish here, but also I wanted to mention, and I told Madeline, that we're also considering a totally different approach, not knowing if it's great or not, but I was in touch actually in London a couple of weeks ago with someone from Vancouver who said that they decided not to open climate shelters and cooling shelters, especially, and take the reverse approach. So they contacted social workers in touch with the vulnerable people and asked them what they needed to face heat and to fight against heat. And instead of opening climate shelters, they just decided to provide what the people and social workers asked for. And that's something that they implemented after the heat dome that they experimented a couple of years ago. So I think it's also interesting to think about a totally different approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you for the provoking last issue that you raised with Vancouver. It reminds me, of course, there's a connection between the national and local heat health action plans and the cooling shelters. So the kind of, and of course you have to be close to and closer as possible to the target groups, as we would say. It's interesting that last summer we had, with one of our first meetings of the European Heat Adaptation Community, we looked what happened in the summer. And particularly in Northern Europe, the kind of the nature-based solutions, the parks, are seen dominantly as the place to be. And we all thought that nobody's in the parks when it's too hot, when it's above 35 degrees. And when you interview people at the supermarket, which I did for a few hours in one of those neighborhoods, people said, no, we stay at home. So that's very learning, just to stay, particularly that's the moment to check that's the really reality check, is during the heat wave, and talk to people and to see how they experience the heat. Often we forget those kind of simple actions that are needed to get a good insight. Anyway, thank you so much. And I think, again, many issues are coming here. There was a little bit of a conflict with your presentation. I saw the last slides came in suddenly at a time. But it's okay. We have your presentation, and we can connect it to the report later on, so people can always look back. Again, for people who came in later, please flood the chat with links to reports and documents from your city or where you learned from. We will also all collect it at the end of the webinar with the when we send out the webinar learning and the webinar itself. The next presentation will come from middle of Italy, from the Emilia-Romagna region. Good. For those of us that Paola, if I'm right, Bologna is in it, Rimini is in it, so people have a kind of idea where to be suited. Thank you. You're from the Public Health Department from the region, and you will give this presentation together with Marco Polastri. And Marco, the word eosis has already been falling in the presentation from Paris. So it's an easy link up to your story, I guess. Paula, may I give the floor to you?
Thank you. I am a bit of problem with my connection this afternoon, so I try. Marco will share the slide we prepared. As you said, I work in the public health department as an epidemiologist. I'm very glad to be this afternoon to present you this project. And this the problem, as you see, is linked to is a project of a size to develop a system of climatosis in our region. And the idea obviously is linked to the to the heat waves, to the climate change. It's a project within our global strategy for adaptation to climate change. And here you can see a time series since 1961, and so it's evident that the problem is increasing, and the future climate scenarios indicate that heat waves will become more and more frequent. And we know that the exposure to heat gives serious health impacts, such as an increase in mortality, particularly most vulnerable populations. So we have to think about this subgroup of population needing more actions to be protected. And the most vulnerable people are elderly people. And the condition of elderly people is aggravated by social factors, such as I cannot see the slides going forward. Marco, please help me, because I don't know.
I have any problems with my
today we have a problem with the connection. Sorry for the.
That's what you always see.
But
yesterday we have
the problem of elderly people is a problem of health impacts due to the exposure to heat, but also a problem of the a social factor linked to the loneliness that elder people experiment during summer season due to the holiday of family members. And this loneliness is linked for the reason of holidays, but also because in our region a lot of elderly in single person households. And so this condition makes loneliness a significant issue during the so in for the where family ties are weaker. Then we have in mind also the another factor that is the energy poverty, because there is also a problem of and the disadvantaged economic and social condition represent a factor of greater exposure to the effects of climate change. So in our plan, all these conditions are dealt with within the regional prevention plan, which dedicated to environment and health. The project of in the and did a specific project to develop this a model for climate oasis to be developed throughout the whole region, where the single municipalities can implement and manage the realization of climate oasis, but in this coordinated manner at a regional level. Want to develop experimentation with 4 pilot cities, and we are involving the local authorities, but also the health authorities and the local administration. And now I give the floor to Marco to go deeper in the project.
Okay. I show you what are the application of this kind of model and the process that we are building with the Emilia-Romagna region. I'm Marco Polasti from Centro Antartide, that is environmental studies center located in Bologna. And the strategy want to connect and to create a network of we called climate oasis and not climate shelter, because we like much more to be inspired by peaceful places than more not a very tragic contest, and also order to involve much more people in this kind of adaptation to climate change. And so this, as Paula said, we are focusing in not only in a structure that can create a good condition, well-being condition for the people, but also to make a social answer, in particular during the summer period. Okay. And so we are focusing on the vulnerable and fragile area where they are located, inhabited by people that are problem by social or also health problems. So our issues are the model have to be developed valid for cities of different sizes, because we are now making experimentation for 4 cities all around the region. But after that, we have to apply this kind of model for all the cities, not only the big one, but also the smaller one. And the other question is fundamental element is to enhance the social dimension. And the first step that we are working for is to create a set of indicators valid for all the cities and so on. This is the work steps for the structure of the climate oasis, and I go faster. And the first one is to create a combined set of indicators that combine also physical and meteorological aspect connected to the heat waves, but also social one, in order to focus the more fragile area in the cities. And on the second step, and then we are concluding this part, this step, and then we are to create a model, a definition of the model that have to be 2 different aspects, and also how we want to create build the oasis are there have to be available indoor and outdoor comfortable condition and they have to be furnishing that encourage socializing, relax, and is necessary to have a cooling system indoors and adequate shade outdoor. The space must be fully accessible, pleasant and welcoming, and they have to be continuously open and a point of reference. So we are addressing to some just community places and that are well known by the population of that area. On the other side, we have other aspects as for social aspect that for us the climate houses have to be animated, and so we have to create events and other opportunity to involve people and to make to face loneliness, to connect and to make social inclusion and social animation for the people of the area involved, and so this is our idea. Very sorry for my bad presentation, but we are available for other answer. Okay.
Thank you so much, Marco and Paula. I'm really sorry that there were some technical issues with your presentation, but again, we have it and we can include it in the report after this webinar. So it's very helpful and interesting to see. I'm very happy you also addressed the social isolation as a key issue, because that's what we learned from the big heat waves in other cities, that was a determining factor for those who suffered most from the heat and even died from it. For time reasons, I don't open for questions here. But again, please use the chat, put your questions there, and we will all follow up later on after this webinar. And would like to go to the final presentation of this session, to move to Barcelona. And to thank Javier, because he stepped in at the last moment, because his colleague Anna is helping in South America to help cities to build cooling shelters and organize cooling shelters. So here you are from Javier. I don't see you yet in the call, but yeah, there you are. There you are. Sure. I must say we're very interested. All points, all directions work to Barcelona. I don't know why, but it seems that everybody's thrilled about to hear how you organize your cooling shelter. So please give it away.
Thank you very much for the introduction. In fact, personally, me was only here since 3 years ago. So these all started before I was here. I'll do my best to explain. I work as a technician at the team coordinating the climate shelter network in Barcelona. So it will be a pleasure to share some insights, not all the details, but some insights, because it is a short presentation. So we organize that into just saying what the features of Barcelona are, regarding the climate shelter spaces. When was that started? Why, which reasons, and how we manage this network. Let me see if we manage. Yeah. So that's and this is a short map of the places in the city of Barcelona from last summer, with all the places. Okay, what is this network in Barcelona currently? What is this made of? So we have basically like 3 types of we call them now climate shelter spaces. Initially it was climate shelters in general, but in 2025 we started adding a new feature, this option C, which is here at the bottom, the indoor micro shelters, which are smaller spaces for shorter time, but adding some extra local, like more distributed small spaces, more distributed everywhere, like getting something similarly to what many of you have explained that you are working currently, like engaging local businesses, synagogues, praise centers, and all that. So we started officially a few years ago, but last year we did an effort to include them, and that's why in the previous map here are just the tiny black dots. I don't know what this is big enough, but every shelter has its own design, like in the legend. Those are the normal shelters, which are bigger for a longer time, and those that we started as micro shelters are the dark dots in the map. Anyway, so as a summary, we have the outdoor climate shelters like natural parks and gardens and all that, which are kind of big. They are public for everyone. We know that when it's very hot, they don't provide that good climatic comfort, so we are aware of that. Then the others are the indoor climate shelters with a minimum space of 50 square meter. Then they can be. We started with the public ones, but then recently, a few years after, then we started including the private ones, and then the micro shelters I was saying now, like pharmacies, local businesses, and so on. So in short, in our case, we also offer them not only for heat. I know this webinar is for heat, but we in Southern Europe, houses are not adapted to cold. You know, in other parts of Europe, you are more adapted to cold than not to heat. But here we were not adapted to cold. So the idea was providing like some thermal comfort in extreme conditions of heat and cold. That's why we also run the network now in winter time. We adapt that to the ones, you know, getting rid of the public parks and gardens from the maps, but then they also indicating where the places where people can go there to spend some hours and some part of the day, whether if they cannot, because of the energy poverty, they cannot keep the thermal comfort at home and so on. Okay, we included the swimming pools during a drought 2 years ago. We have a serious drought for 3 years. I mean, getting less rainfall than usual for 3 years, and very intense drought 2 years ago. And then we added like the swimming pool, the public ones, even if it was the first one, the only one that you had to pay off. They had an entrance fee. All the others were free of charge, but swimming pools, they had an entrance fee, a public entrance fee. But anyway, there was a discussion, and we decided to add them to the network because of the drought period, and then it was not clear whether we were able to keep them full of water in summer, but if they were climate shelters, then we were able to fill them in, not only Barcelona City, but in many other of the municipalities where we had the same issue. So they can be public and private, and mainly they need to have good accessibility, chairs, and toilets, preferably toilets and drinking water. That's common to all places that you are doing this in many municipalities, kind of the same. A reference temperature of 26 in summer, 21 in winter. It cannot be too far from here because also of the energetic expense of keeping that. So it needs to be quite close to those temperatures. In both times of the year. Recommended for vulnerable people, but not for ill people, you know, like anyway, things that you already know, you're already doing in many municipalities. We need to be aware that especially in Spain and also in Catalonia and Barcelona, most places close on August. In other countries, maybe there is not 1 month of that everybody closes. In Southern Europe, or at least here we do, most places close, public and private. So August is kind of a critical place, the hottest summer, and most places are closed. And especially Sundays in August is the archetypical case of the most difficult thing to cover, because people die also on Sundays of August, of course, or even more if there are less places. So this is a difficult thing to keep on, to provide the network. And then, as I said, in 2015, we added the micro shelters. Why did we add this network? Okay, in the last decade, I mean, the network was started in 2020. After many years in the last decade, we experienced some of those heat waves getting more frequent in the last days. I mean, the last years, since 2022, we are getting heat wave every year, lasting longer, even a few of those every year. So it's getting worse. But anyway, it was in the 2017, 18, 19, we were starting to have heat waves every year. And then Barcelona wrote the first climate plan in 2019, which included adaptation measures, not just mitigation as we did as a city in the past. And the idea came also at the same time from the C40 network, starting to create the Cool Cities network. And then we were adapting kind of the opportunity to do that, so with the necessity to cope with this evolving scenario in Southern Europe, in Barcelona. So that's why we started in 2020. And as I said before, most buildings are not adapted as well to cold, so our network is also open in winter. We adapted, like you can see the map here. In winter, there are less spaces, 2,048 now this winter compared to the more than 450 last summer. But anyway, again, taking care of which spot of the city has less coverage and all that. So some details about when the network was started and how did it evolve. As I said, we started in 2020, and then it was started from the public administration, the municipality, saying, okay, what can we do in this scenario? What can we do with no extra budget, with no extra money from the municipality? What can we do to start helping people which is suffering those conditions, and they are not able to pay the bills for the air conditioning, or they do not have air conditioning, or they do not have another way to go. They need to spend in the city in all buildings not adapted and so on. So what can we do? And the idea was let's start with indoor places from the municipality that they are running their own business, like libraries, like proximity centers, cultural centers, and so on. But they have some entrance door, air conditioning, you know the situation in your municipality. So that was the starting point, and that's why they started this in 2020 with 70 of those equipment, facilities, and so on. And also natural parks, because we know natural parks are not that good when the temperature is too high, but let's say between 26 and 32, they provide some good comfort, and beyond 32 as a reference, for instance, they are starting to be too hot, and then do not provide good comfort. There is a range of temperatures in which they can be useful for that comfort, and then that's why natural parks started in the beginning, and we still are having them, because they are also free access and so on. And the other interesting thing here from this slide is like we are monitoring the coverage of the city and the citizens, the people sensed in the census of the citizens. So how many, let's say somehow, the politicians in power of the government, they say, our goal is to have in 2030 climate shelter, one of those spaces within a 5-minute reach for every person in Barcelona, at least sensed, and in Barcelona. I was asking before, okay, in the case of Paris, it's census and tourists. Well, it's difficult because in summer there are many people commuting or tourists in the city and not the people sensed. But anyway, at least with the sensed people in the city with the census. So by 2030, everyone should have one at the 5-minute walk. So that we are monitoring that. And those lines here, the green lines indicate the number of shelters, spaces, and then the yellow one are the coverage within a 5-minute walk. And then this yellowish, light greenish color, the other one, the one on top, is the coverage at 10-minute walk. So it will be very difficult to find this, to meet this goal of 100% of population of a shelter with a 5-minute reach. But anyway, it's a reference to see how can we evolve towards that over the time. And then the map here, you see over space, over the space of the city, which areas are covered within a 5-minute or 10-minute reach, and so on. So, and then how do we manage this? Now we are more than 400 spaces, and then you were asking us to share some insights on how to deal with that, the governance and all that. So it's quite similar to what I have been hearing here. Maybe we started before, but it's kind of the same problem and the same difficulties and challenges. So we have a coordination team in our office, the Office of Climate Change and Sustainability, with just a few civil workers, with some backup when we are on vacation and all that, but just a couple of people. Then the city of Barcelona is divided in 10 districts. So there is a person per district related to any topics related to sustainability and environment. So one person per district doing a little bit of help in there, plus what we call the referents, the referral people per shelter type. Like for all libraries, there is one person doing as a referral for the libraries, one for the public markets, one for the sports centers, one for, and so on, so that we cannot make a flat structure that from the coordination team we talk and communicate with all the 400 centers. That's not the way. So we need to have some sort of kind of a structure to have intermediaries referring to the ones of either the districts, like by the size of the city, or by the type of shelter for most of the usual community. There are some exceptional cases in which we communicate directly with the 400 or whichever number we have every year, but it's kind of the exception. Normally it's through territorial districts and types of shelters in there. We have define some sort of communication protocol, but since we are growing, then we need to readapt it to make it even more simpler, so that even the workers at the shelters which are a library or a cultural center for all people, or so they are not just a shelter, a person devoted to the shelter itself. They are doing their own business plus allowing a space for people to come in when it's too hot. And then sometimes the workers, they are not aware of all the details because of changing workers in summertime and so on. And then we also coordinate, of course, regional authorities and other initiatives in a bigger scale in there. So again, to point out that there was no extra budget to open spaces, like the budget is the budget to do activities within the spaces or do the communication campaign. But it's not that, okay, Barcelona opens plenty of spaces as climate shelter spaces in summertime. Well, they are opened already. There was an exemption last summer in which some extra money was invested specifically to open them in August. Some of those which were going to be closed in August as usual. But it was kind of the exception. Like the normal rule is that there is no extra budget to open them. It's just to manage the campaign, the communication campaign, and all the data. We also have some help from technical support from Barcelona region, which is good. Otherwise, we were not able to cope with all the GIS analysis that is required to identify new places and then points of interest in the places with low coverage so that we can talk to them, to knock the doors, to see whether they are willing to join or they accept to join the network and so on. So this extra technical support from this Barcelona regional public company that's helping is critical for us to keep doing that with this limited budget. And then year after year to try to identify, as we say, some good GIS analysis so that we see, they identify the areas with less coverage. And then every year, let's focus on that so that the most vulnerable areas with low coverage and so on, and new agents are identified, can join. Either we knocking the door for the public administrations or opening through some public form that anyone can just knock our door and add their information. And then we since most businesses, they know that they are starting to join through this procedure, and they are joining the network even if we did not know about them before that. Okay, and then last, some communication campaign that includes, of course, the website and the map, a good map. The website, we doing a lot of self-criticism. We are not we need to improve the map here in the case of Barcelona. We are doing our best, but there are some limits with the filters, so we need to. We are amazed with the case of London and Paris and so on. So we will have to improve it. There is a point of improvement here in the case of the map we have in the website, but we also have smartphone applications for citizens, for anyone, which also with all the information of the city, which also show the climate shelters related to the place where they are. So taking their geolocation and then saying, okay, within this distance, what do you have open here? And then all that. So we provide the signaling of the spaces and some welcome kit with some glasses of water that they can give for free to citizens, especially taking into account during the COVID period, so that we need to, we had to be able to provide water, but also to not add too much hazard or too much complications in every place because of the getting COVID because of the glasses. So the idea was provide glasses so they give them for free, reusable glasses. They are not to throw away, so they can keep them at home and keep using them, and then avoid the issue of cleaning them with enough health warranty so that we were not spreading illnesses through the use of those glasses. So those are the welcome kits for the new shelters every year, and then with some campaigns and social media, but also taking into account the printed material. As you said, most elders, they do not get to know the network through digital tools, but they need printed material. And then we are doing an effort last year with a new type of printed material with signs indicating whether they were open sometime in August, for instance, or closed whole August, or indicated in the printed material whether they accepted dogs like pets. You can go there with your pet, or there is a toilet, or it's adapted to people in wheelchairs, which 99.9 places were, but some private places were not. So providing the information, also the printed material, which is not that easy. So we are working in that direction for the vulnerable and elders, which rely on the printed material and so on. And then we also do some field work to assess the performance, because we start saying, please come in. They report that they comply with temperatures and everything, so please come in. They are adapted, but then we go every year to assess a percentage of those ones as much as we can with our own staff and some people helping us, and then mainly to monitor, well, to check many things, but mainly also the critical thing is the temperature inside compared to the temperature outside, depending on the time of the day, and it was too hot or too not, then they are able to keep a difference in temperature inside versus outside. Or the outdoor spaces within the cool area of the natural park compared to outside of the cool area of the natural park to see whether they provide enough comfort at their climate shelter versus out of the climate shelter, also in outdoor spaces. But since we were saying before, when temperature is too high, we know that you do not perform, like more than 32 or something, we know that there is no point. But for the indoor, for instance, we need to measure for sure. And then some of them are kind of evaluated and suggested to reevaluate whether they can continue the year after, or they are invited just to leave the network. So that was most of it. That and I have the last minute. I know, Madeleine, you are going to say that I need to finish. So lessons learned, just as a kind of sum up. So we will learn from this experience. So help people to come to the project and create a community. We need that is important. Otherwise, this is not a scalable project grows, and then you can run the whole thing. So that actually the project helps us, because otherwise everybody in the public sometimes everybody relies on someone else knocking the door. Yes, and so Gucci's analysis, it's critical. Yeah,
there's something going on with the technique. I think you're punished because it's too long. So I think
if I have the 30 seconds to finish, then I finish the slide. I cannot hear you.
The quality has gone down, so that's why I'm intervening. But we can read the text, and
fine.
I'm really sorry to have to interrupt, but the techniques suddenly had to choke up. But thank you so much. What a wealth. And all of you, what a wealth of information that we have brought together in this 1.5 hour. And I think everybody, I see it in the chat. Also, thank you very much for everyone who has been active on the chat. Another wealth of information on To Break This On. I'd like to find a few final words on this webinar. As said from the beginning, this is not the last time we will discuss this. And I think this webinar for all of us, and I'm thinking out loud, will come up with a kind of mini questionnaire to all the participants to get some ideas on how to move forward. Because we have to I think to put it apart as well. There's some specific questions that we can distillate, I think, from this webinar when it comes to monitoring the effectiveness of what has been developed. As said, also a lot of research is done on effectiveness that can be shared. I think what can be shared are approaches, to be fine-tuning on approaches, so people don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think there's already so much in this that many other municipalities who are considering to work on climate shelters can make use of. So we have to make it applicable. And I'm also thinking ahead of this European adaptation plan. I think we can also bring concrete proposals to them on how climate shelters can be very effective in addressing extreme heat. I'm sorry to be short, but there's 3 minutes left for this webinar. But we have such a wealth of information. I hope you're all comfortable with this. As I'm trying to conclude this, I really would like to thank our speakers. It was very interesting to have this from north to south walk through and to see the similarities between some of them. I'm sorry for some technical hiccups that we had, but I think overall this has been much better than we expected ahead. And given the number of participants, I think we have an issue here that is really relevant to many of us and really deserves continuity one way or the other. So Faye, Eileen, Michelle, Leah, Paula, Marco, and Javier, thank you so much. And I wish all of you a very good evening to take all this in, and we'll see each other one way or the other in the near future on this vital issue. Thank you so much.